Welcome, and thank you for joining us for another TechSoft Ventures webinar. This webinar today is on change management, tools, technologies, and best practices. Before we begin, let's talk about your technology briefly. Your lines have been muted for the duration of the webinar, but you can ask questions at any time in your question box, and we encourage you to do so. We'll try to answer those at the end of the presentation. You can slide open and close the panel with your double arrow or orange arrow. Now, please allow me to introduce today's speaker. Lezlie Osborn is a veteran education professional at TechSoft Ventures. She has over a decade worth of training experience and extensive knowledge in the software education space. Recently, she did an SAP education project with over 600 users and a WMS rollout utilizing Manhattan Associates software. She's great at these tools and technologies for our discussion today. And with that, Lezlie, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Alan, for that introduction. And hello, everybody. I'd like to ask you, is this a good pictorial of how you handle change at your company? It's rough out there, but you grin and bear it. And although you and possibly the entire company are uncomfortable, you know that some of you are going to make it out the other side, right? Well, you can adapt, control, and effect the winds of change at your company. And it is by using the concept of organizational change management, which, like all business practices, works best when you use it correctly. Do you OCM? Today we're going to talk about engaging your constituency using different technologies for communication. We're going to look at the fact that maybe you're fooling yourself and your company is actually changing a lot more than you think it is. We're going to take a look at significant friends and foes of change. And we actually have a couple of case studies that are going to show you why the best chances for successful change are managed from the top down. Let's lay a little groundwork real quick about OCM. How do you know if you need an OCM approach at your company? Well, the answer is if your company experiences changes, you might want to have a formalized approach. An OCM approach that is utilized over and over again is going to build consistency in your company, and it's going to build trust within your employee base. Some of you might wonder if OCM is trendy or if it's something you actually need in your business. Well, there are many articles and case studies published about OCM and the facts. Companies come and go. Failure to adapt to change is the prominent reason for the go. Is there a standard formula that you should put into practice? The short answer is no. There are several different schools of OCM thought and processes which offer certifications, workshops, etc. And there are many companies out there to help you design and implement OCM. Is OCM part of a company strategy, or is it just a bolt-on? What's your answer? Let's talk about how you might want to communicate or how you can communicate differently. I know that communication is used at many of your companies right now. You probably create a newsletter, a quarterly communication, maybe you send out a random how you feeling survey, or run a contest once in a while. Communication is a very large and key component of OCM. Your communications for OCM need an edge. They need to make a statement. They need to get flashy. Your work base is changing. They are more collaborative, technologically savvy, imaginative, and confident. So your communication needs to meet their expectations. Utilize tools that do not repeat your change history. Try something new. Entertain your employees. Get them involved. Spark their imaginations. In the software training space, we call that edutainment, because you can educate and entertain at the very same time. Some tools that you might consider for communicating differently are Brain Shark, BrainShark is actually a PowerPoint with voiceover. And you can use as many voices as you want. You can go as straight and narrow with one person, or you can have 2 or 3 voices where there's actually a conversation or some color commentary talking about the changes that are coming or the process that is changing. BrainShark has lots of different levels attached to it, and you can actually send it out by email and track who has actually viewed it to see who is actually aware of the process that's coming along. GoAnimate is an internet tool that actually allows you to make cartoons, lots of different kinds of cartoons, and you can add voice to get your message across. CodeBaby is an internet tool that allows you to use avatars. You can dress them, you can make their hair the way you want them to, they can have the kind of speech that you want them to. They can actually do cartwheels across the screen if you really want to capture somebody's attention. And all these are different tools that you can use to communicate differently with your constituency. I'd like us to take a look right now at GoAnimate. Now I want you to know that this is designed to be fun and entertaining at the same time. As you can see, we have a scene where we have Kate, who is the company leader, and she is visiting with Simon, who is one of her employees. And they're in a neutral zone. They're in kind of a coffee shop. And Kate has said, Simon, we are going to make some changes to the way you make fire. You're no longer going to use sticks. And that is how we have this set up. And now I'm going to add a scene. And if I click on Simon, I can show under the actions that Simon is instantly dejected. And Simon is going to say in his voice, changes, does that mean no more Simon? Because that is sometimes what our associates think when changes come, don't they? And if I add the voice, it's going to add it down here. We're going to add another scene in which Kate is going to be instantly compassionate with Simon. And she is going to approach him. We have to change her voice, of course. And she says, certainly not. We will teach you. And you can see her mouth moving. And the final scene to this communication Simon is going to be ecstatic. So much so that he's going to jump on the table. And Kate is going to be ecstatic too. Simon is going to say what every excited employee says, wahoo. And you can go ahead and preview your little video anytime that you want. Now I am showing you GoAnimate in its most simplistic form. There are so many more advances that you can use with this internet tool and all of the other tools that I talked about earlier. And if you're interested, go ahead and contact us at the end of this webinar. All changes affect a company's people, processes, organization, and technology. All changes do that. And all companies measure ROI, right? Remember, we already said that you can adapt control, and effect those changes. You can control your return on the investment of the changes if you want to. Ellen Glasgow, a prominent American author, said, "All change is not growth, as all movement is not forward," which wholly supports the purpose of OCM. You need to mitigate the risks of the project, of the development, of the change that's coming down the pipe, including the cost, the scheduling, and the performance of your people, your company, and everyone else that's involved. OCM done right achieves desired and necessary goals and allows your company to ROI like a champ. Musician Jimi Hendrix said, "In order to change the world, you have to get your head together first." Now, I know you might not be into quoting Jimi Hendrix at your company, but what he stated has validity. Have goals and have a plan to attain those goals. Know what ROI you are wanting to attain with this change that is coming. Always remember, it's easiest to ride a horse in the direction it's going. In other words, don't struggle against the change. Learn to use it to your advantage and to your company's advantage. So let's go ahead and take a look at some ways that you might be fooling yourself. There might be changes going on all around in your company, and you haven't once thought that it might be a change that you need to manage. Look at this list. Are there some changes on there that you really hadn't thought that might require some OCM? Any change affects somebody. Any change affects a process. Any change affects your organization and technology. Even moving your IT from one building to the building across town, or moving HR from the 4th floor to the 2nd floor. There are changes involved there. Here's a little excerpt from a case study that we're going to look at a lot today. After leaving tremendous amounts of change rubble behind following selling part of their business, then restructuring resource groups, then relocating the company headquarters, and then heading into a global ERP project, this particular company's CEO said enough, and he sanctioned an enterprise-wide approach to change. No longer was OCM going to be a bolt-on. It was going to be a company strategy that was employed over and over and over again. Let's go ahead and take a look at some friends and foes. Our friends and our foes, they're all great. We need all of them in our company. They play important parts. But when it comes to change management, we're going to use those people differently. Some friends of OCM are going to be supportive management and leadership. That's probably a given, right? Associate employee inclusion in the change process. That is a big friend of OCM. It's going to be up to them to adapt, include them. And a great way to include your employees is to use clear, concise, timely, transparent communication. All 4 of those words are very important. Some foes of OCM very well could be your company culture. And I pause because that might be a hard one to swallow. Because we're all proud of our company culture. We're proud of where we work. We're proud of what we do. But sometimes that culture can be the biggest mountain that we have to climb when it comes to change. Another foe of OCM are threatened managers. And they're threatened because change brings out a lot of emotions in people. And threatened managers will probably a lot of times have the most resistant employees. Because a manager who feels threatened appears resistant to their people and therefore is unable to effectively lead them. So we all have to remember that the degree to which we engage our managers and supervisors is going to be directly tied to the benefits, our return on our investment for our project. So let's think. What do? Do we neutralize our foes? or should we exploit our friends? Well, research supports exploitation in most situations is the way to go. Communicate clear objectives. Beatles, please stay here forever. I think that's pretty clear. Clear objectives help everybody get involved in the process and enable them to understand why the change is necessary and what they need to do to make it happen. A friend in your company of OCM are the cats that got it. They can interpret the music. These people understand their jobs, they understand the industry, they anticipate changes, they're aware of what's going on in the industry all around the world, and they know what they should be doing. They can feel the beat. They just get it. They see the whole big picture, they change with the times, and they get excited about what's coming in the future. And these cats, they're leaders who can set a beat and anyone follows them. And you know who they are in your company. They communicate, everybody wants to follow them, everybody believes in them, everybody would follow them over the cliff. They are your friends in times of change. Here's a foe of organizational change management. This old management style. This is not the kind of management style you need in a mission-critical situation. Attrition due to retirement means you are replacing your constituency with new millennials, and you have all the tools, resources, and education to be proactive in your change management, because those millennials are not going to react to old-style management. And our final point today was talking about the best change drivers. And those are the people at the top of your organization. The people with all those different titles there that you see on the screen. Because employees do not have a responsibility to manage change, do they? It's their job to do their best in the world that you are going to be giving them. Responsibility for managing change belongs to the executives and the managers and the leaders. They need to be communicators. They need to be advocates. And they need to be coaches. So the question that we all need to ask ourselves when we're managing change is, how well are we preparing our managers and supervisors to be great leaders of change? Are we doing our job to empower them? And are we putting the right people in the right places with the right expectations? The CEO that sanctioned the enterprise-wide change management strategy, this is one of his associates. A critical turning point was the realization by our CEO and chairman that the people side of our changes was not going well. The strategy and vision were present, but we were seeing a plateau and needed to take the next step to get people on board. Our CEO met with the leadership team and asked them, what are you doing to help with change management? He became personally involved in managing the people side of change. A second OCM case study that we are highlighting in this webinar actually did a study on executive sponsorship. There were two business units with the same company implementing the same software. Their implementations were 2 months apart. The business leaders had very diverse change leadership styles, and there were measurable differences at the end of this study. Business Unit 1 demonstrated strong executive support and closely partnered with the change management team. They were always in discussions about ideas and concepts, helping tailor tools and design activities to meet the needs of their business unit. The leaders of the Business Unit 1 employed peer-to-peer communications to ensure important messages were received and understood by end users. Business Unit 2 implemented the new system 2 months later. Their degree of sponsorship and support of change management was less visible to their end users. The leaders demonstrated less support. They complied with general requests, but they did nothing above and beyond. Throughout the phases of the project, Business Unit 2's end user participation steadily decreased. At the end of this project, I mentioned there were measurable differences because there were surveys taken. And a standard OCM question is, do you feel you have sufficient project information? And if you look at the pie chart on the right, that is Business Unit 2. And 60% of their respondents said, yeah, I feel good about this. And I think most of us would say, 60%, that's a pretty good number, right? Well, when you look at Business Unit 1, who had 79%, I'm sorry, on a grading scale, I think we're looking at an F to a high C, right? Big difference. Another standard OCM question following an implementation is, I feel like I have the skills and the knowledge to effectively do my work in this changed environment. Business Unit 2's responses are on the right, 56%. Now, I don't know about you, but in the business world, I think if only 50% of my people felt confident, I'd be a little bit nervous as a leader. But if you look at Business Unit 1, 81% of the respondents said, yeah, I get this. I know my job. I'm confident. Bring it on. And I think this shows a lot about the change management style and strategy between these leaders. We have a 30-day post-go-live measurement and a 90-day post-go-live measurement. And we are measuring associates. Do you feel like you've been supported in your job after the implementation? Did we just train you, turn it on, and walk away? Or have we stood beside you? Well, at 30 days, you can see that Business Unit 1 and Business Unit 2, they're pretty similar, aren't they? 78, 79%, there's no difference. And that's great. We want our constituency feeling like we support them. However, at 90 days, look at the disparity between Business Unit 2, which is at 78%, and Business Unit 1 at 89%. It appears that there is a true understanding that change is constant and ever-present and requires leadership by the sponsors of Business Unit 1. This is a quote from the actual change leader with the sanctioned OCM strategy. I personally felt a déjà vu experience where I was getting ready to watch another slow-motion car accident. I used to tell the leadership team, I can speak slower and louder, but we're not making forward progress. We were all nodding our heads saying, we understand what and the why, but we're missing the how. What can we do differently? And that was the real push to go find some tools for change management. And this is the recipe for starting that journey towards change management that that company has come up with. You need a visible past failure with significant organizational impact. In other words, there needs to be pain that a lot of people remember. You need an upcoming mission-critical project, something with some ROI attached to it, right? You need recognition by senior leaders for more OCM knowledge and tools. Recognition by senior leaders And then finally, you need a whole lot of a leader with the vision and influence to take on the effort of building OCM within your company. Because the biggest change drivers come from the top down. So, you can OCM, everyone. Change your communication rules. Approach every company change with an OCM strategy. Build that trust. Build that consistency. Exploit your OCM friends and mitigate your foes. If that's something you haven't tried in the past, give it a whirl. And always remember, change leaders should be at the top. They're the ones that are building this company, and everybody else is helping out. Thank you for your time today, and I'll hand it back to you, Alan.
Thank you very much. And while we take our questions, we'll launch a quick poll. If you'd like additional information, whether it be the PowerPoint slides, a link to the advanced tools that were shown today, or a conference call on this topic, or even if you'd like to suggest another webinar topic, just respond to this confidential poll. With that, several questions have come in. Let me paraphrase. What can we do if we have a very large foe base within our organization?
What can you do if you have a very large foe base? I guess you do want to neutralize that foe base, and probably the best way to do that is find some very, very strong friends that can go ahead and work with them, talk with them, work alongside with them, and try to discover their fears, because that's usually what is driving a foe.
That's a good segue, because several people ask questions relating to, can change friends be employees, or do they have to be leaders, or some combination of both?
You can have employees that are actually friends of OCM, absolutely. I mean, some of those cats that we were talking about, sometimes those people don't want to be in leadership or management positions. They prefer to be in that employee role, but they are definitely leaders in your organization, and if you know who they are, absolutely use them to your benefit in change management.
Thank you. As we close our poll right now, we have another question. You talked about the recipe for starting change culture and said something about past failure and significant org impact. What did you mean by that?
Well, that's the pain that I'm talking about. When I referenced the change, the CEO who said that they had all that change rubble, that they went through a change, they sold part of their business, and then there was all this stuff that they had to take care of afterwards because they didn't manage the changes beforehand. And then they went right into resourcing their groups differently, and there was all this fallout from that. That was pain because they were consistently, mopping up after themselves. And there's a way to be proactive, and that's by using organizational change management, and you don't have those messes. You move right through the change, and you're into the next section instead of backing up and taking care of business.
Well, thank you very much. We really appreciate the time today, and we thank everyone who attended today. We had a very large audience. Look for additional TechSoft webinars coming up on a monthly basis on these types of topics, and we thank you again for joining us today. With that, this web seminar is now ending, and we hope you all have a great day.